the word to Brandon.
Okay, thank you, Caroline. So we will have two. Well, hi everyone. So I'm Brandon Godok from the French Livestock Institute. I work on forage systems and also work on agroforestry in ruminant farming. So this presentation will be twofold. First, I will give a large overview and some research results on how trees provide services in a dairy farm in France, and I will focus on what we call agroforestry in France. And then Yasmin, who works at INRAE, will talk about the experimental farm Oasis, about trees used as fodder for dairy cattle. And we wanted to mention that we are both part of a network that is called RMT Agroforestry. So this bring together all the applied research institutes, the fundamental research institutes like INRAE, chambers of agriculture, farm advisors, schools, universities, and people that work in agroforestry in general. So this presentation will be based on some of the results that are put together with this network. All right, so let's have a look at the word agroforestry, which is quite new. I think it was coined in the 70s, but it is something that describe an old practice, a very ancestral agricultural practice. But today we mainly think about this kind of systems where we have alley cropping, so trees planted within the plots, where we can intentionally combine trees production and food production. So here you have a grassland in a dairy farm in north of France with rows of trees within the grassland. The could be a temporary or permanent grassland. So this is now the new kind of image we have about agroforestry. But in fact, it involves a different kind of systems. So this is also a famous kind of landscape in France, quite famous today also because of the Battle of Normandy and the 80th anniversary today, where we had this kind of very dense landscape with a lot of hedgerows and trees around the plots. So that can also refer to agroforestry, because farmers do intentionally combine dairy or food production plus managing trees and producing fuel or timber with the trees. And also agroforestry refers to a lot of tropical systems. So we have the cut and carry fodder trees, for example, in tropical areas where cattle farming is also sometimes, well, cattle are fed with shrubs or leaves from trees. So this is an example from Brazil where you can see, I think that's heifers or dairy cattle anyway that are fed with Opuntia ficus indica cactus. So this also include agroforestry. We also have silvopastoralism kind of system. So this is in France, in Lozère, so south of France, in the central mountains of France, where we have then the animal grazing below trees within forest. So both there's a production of trees, timber or fuel wood, and production of milk. We also have this kind of systems where we have grazed orchards. So that also come from Normandy, but also Brittany and west of France, and also east of France with not only apple trees, but other kinds of fruit trees. So this is called pré-verger in France. We have then both production of fruits and dairy at the same time. And we have more sophisticated also kind of systems with pollarded trees, where trees were like for a long time used as a source of fuel on farms. So here you have pollarded trees in Brittany, where the trees were pruned every 9 years, which was the length of a farm rent. So every 9 years, the peasants would take off the branches to use it for cooking or for heating. So I asked myself the question preparing this presentation: how many dairy farms in France do agroforestry, or how many agroforestry dairy systems do we have in France? Which is a very odd question to ask, not really easy to answer. So we have the agricultural census from 2020 that counts around 50,000 dairy farms in France. So you can see on the map on the left, mainly in west of France, but also in the region areas and north of France. And out of this census, we have 700 farms that declare performing agroforestry, on average 4.7 hectares. So the definition of agroforestry is not really clear, but I imagine it's something around alley cropping or trees within plots. So that's a number that is growing. A lot of farmers are planting more and more within the grasslands or within the plots. So in 2020 it was 700 farms, and on top of that we have 3,500 farms that perform silvopastoralism according to the crop codes that they declare for the CAP payments. So I had a look at the codes uh, about grazed forest or other kind of land, extensive grasslands with a lot of shrubs or trees. So that's also an information that is interesting. But also a lot of dairy farms are doing agroforestry without knowing it or by nature. So when you look at the density of hedgerows on the right hand side, the map shows that a lot of hedgerows in France are located in the dairy sectors or the west of France, where we have Normandy and Brittany with a high density of hedgerows, high density of cows too, because as I mentioned, the bocage is the association of grasslands and hedgerows. But also north of France, you can see the little area here where the cheese monster is from. Maroilles is from, sorry, Thiérache and Avenois, where you have a lot of dairy cattle and a lot of hedgerows too. So, well, it's not a perfect correlation, but we can tell that a lot of dairy farmers are actually performing agroforestry, even though it's a new word for an old practice. So in terms of context, let's have a look at climate change and how it's going to affect dairy farmers in France, because this is the big challenge for dairy farms, and I wanted to show some graphs. So here on the left we have the observed and the predicted mean temperature change in France. So based on a reference line around the start of the 20th century, we have on average a temperature that increased by about 1.7 degrees in France. 2022 was a very hot year as well, and also 2023 was the second warmest year in France. So we have an observed historical trend that is clear, and that is maybe that is said to be faster, going up faster than the prediction of a median of IPCC models. So this is the red line. So it represents the prediction for temperature change for I think it's 7 IPCC models that actually underestimate maybe the warming of France, according to this author Aurélien Ribes and colleagues. So we have a climate that is going astray, and that includes for a farmer that settle today in 2024, he will have a complete different climate to deal with, to produce forage and to produce milk. So in terms of number of days per year where we have temperatures that goes beyond 25 degrees. So hot days, according to Météo France. We have a big rise of number of hot days in all regions of France. So we can see that there's an influence of the Atlantic Ocean on the map, where the western regions are a bit less affected by climate change compared to the south, southeast, and southwest. But still, it's a big move. In 50 years, we're gonna have on average twice more hot days in the year. So above 25 degrees, the English or perennial ryegrass stop growing, and the dairy cattle are suffering from heat stress. So then, why are trees useful for dairy farmers? How do trees contribute to a more resilient systems? So we have different kind of services that are provided by the tree. We have all the types of production that a tree can produce. So diversification on a farm. So wood, for example, but also fruits, as we've seen with the orchards. We also have some results and interesting interesting plus that we will focus on today on animal heat comfort. Then trees are also a source of fodder, and so that's true for tropical systems, but also for temperate systems. So Yasmin is going to have a dip into that. And also agronomic services. The trees also provide services for the crop and for grasslands. And of course, we have environmental services and other externalities for societies. So let's have a look more into the animal heat comfort theme. So this service was cited as the most important according to farmers. So this was a survey that was made 4 years ago, and well, even 6 years ago, and published by Moreau and colleagues. And dairy farmers consider trees in a farm first as an umbrella, and really that's an interesting thing, is that farmers do care about the comfort of their cows, and that's the most cited service for that in the eyes of a farmer. So heat stress for dairy cow is then influenced by different parameters. We have temperature, air humidity, but also wind speed and radiation. And a cow is in fact like a radiator in itself. It produces a lot of watts and energy digesting its meals. So that's important to take into account also, that heat is coming from the cow itself. And when we combine temperature and air humidity, we can calculate what we call the THI index. So this is the temperature humidity index, which approaches the heat stress of a cow. And this was the results for a dairy herd in Brittany, so where we have a lot of cows in west of France, in 2019. So you have in blue the THI, the daily mean THI of so over the summer of 2019, and in green these are the dots. It represents the milk daily production by the herd, and we can see that when we go above 68, which refers to a stress for THI, then you have a drop in the production of milk. So here it's quite sudden in late June, and then it can represent a lot of milk for a herd, and a lot of money also for a farmer. So this is quite striking, but there are also other consequences. Milk is the most obvious one, but we also have problems with reproduction, fertility. There's also disease and lameness that is provoked by heat stress. So there's not only the milk production. So in terms of this THI, this index, temperature humidity index, we did have a look at how it's going to evolve in the future. And so you have here different evolutions for three important dairy regions of France. And we can see that in the long run, going up to 2000, 2100, so at the end of this century, we will have more days with the stress. So in black, it's the heavy stress, and in orange, it's the moderate stress, and in blue, it's the light stress. So we will have more and more days with stress and days with stress that are going to be more and more heavy. And trees work like a buffer in this context. So you have on the left some experiments that were done by my colleague Jean-Christophe Moreau and Camille Béral that did follow the temperature under a grazed orchard. So in red, you have the temperature just below the tree, the apple tree in the orchard. And in green, it's between the rows of the orchard, and blue, it's the control grassland that was with no trees next to the grazed orchard. And you can tell that there's a large difference between both, about 2 degrees on average over the month, but over a day it could go up to 6 degrees. Well, in this case, in 2016 and 2017, it went up to a gap of 6 degrees, so which represents a lot for a cow. On the right, you have the same kind of data that were translated into THI, so using the humidity also on top of the temperature. And we can see that the tree can work as a big umbrella that helps going from a moderate heat stress for the cow down to a light heat stress, which also then influence the production of milk or the well-being of the cow itself. So here there was a picture. So this is not the orchard that was studied in this experiment, but it's just a funny picture where you can see that there's one cow under every tree. Well, it's obvious that cows feel better below trees than in open field kind of grasslands. So this is some results from north of France, from Arnaud Deltour from the Chamber of Agriculture. He did the same experiment on agroforestry system with alley cropping in north of France. And even though it's north of France and it's quite cold over there, he did find a difference of 10 degrees, almost 10 degrees in July 2022 on I think it was the 18th of July. So one day. So this is a result for one day. It's not very detailed here on this slide, but the control grassland was at 43 degrees so that's the maximum temperature during the day. So around 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock. And in the air-conditioned room, as he called it, it was 33 degrees. So that's a huge difference. And then on the right, you have the map of the grazing, the grazed plot of the farm. So the farm is here with the milking parlor, and then the cows have access to these plots, which belongs to this farmer. And he has here the air-conditioned room, so which is really thought and designed for this purpose to to welcome the cows in the summer when it's too hot. So then maybe he brings hay or other kind of forage to this grassland, because then the grass is not producing that much in summer, but instead of having the cows in the shed, he has them here outside with no problems with the litter or whatever work to do in the cow shed. So this can be thought as a innovation or as an interesting way to deal with climate change in the future in France, to have in every dairy farm this kind of air-conditioned so-called air-conditioned grassland within a grazing map. But we also can think about trees by the cowshed, because as I said, in the summer, there's not a lot of grass growth. So sometimes most of the dairy farmers bring the cows indoors in the cowshed and feed them with stock forage like maize or others. And then a lot of farmers are investing in fans or other kind of equipment to cool down the cowshed in the summer. So here you can think about poplar trees or other trees by the cowshed to have a positive influence on the heat ambience inside the cowshed. So that was shown by your colleagues Jacques Capdeville and Morgan Lambert, where these trees do influence the temperature inside the cowshed. So now let's talk about agronomic services that a tree provide for the dairy farmers. So we did some study in two research project called Arbel and Parasol, where grass production was compared between agroforestry grassland and a normal grassland. And what we discovered is that yields was lower below trees. So that's also obvious and an observation that farmers do have when they see trees below the hedgerows or when they see grass below hedgerows or trees. There's a competition for light and a competition for water, so that's important to admit it. But at the plot scale, they didn't identify any impact. On average, there's less production below the trees, but more production inside or in the inter rows, or on average at the plot scale. So there could be a wind belt effect or something else, a temperature effect maybe in the winter. There are losses and wins to have trees on a grassland when we talk about yields. In terms of phenology, there's a production curve that is lagged. So the gramineae, all the plants have a slower development, and then it's interesting to have these plants that come to seedings a bit later in the year, so you can then space out your grazing management. So this also depends on the species and the density of the shade for sure, but the production curve in general is a bit shifted to the right, so lagged, and so you have then more production in the summer, not over all summer, but you have a slightly better production in June or July. In terms of feed value, there are better feed value that were measured below the trees. So this is a bit unexplained, but it can rely to the phenology of the plant, or the fact that plants then have a different kind of folium when they are in a competition for light. And then in terms of botany, we did see that there were less legumes, so less clover and lucernes, alfalfa under trees, but there are also other species. And in terms of density, that brought us to recommend to farmers to stay below 50 trees per hectare. And also the architecture management is quite important, where pruning and managing the trees is important to reduce light competition. In terms of agronomic services, we can also talk about water, and that wasn't very studied on agroforestry systems, but we do know that in the 21st century, climate models indicate for France more rainfall in winter and less rainfall in summer. So that's a big challenge for dairy farmers to manage grazing and access to the plots in terms of bearing capacity of the soil. And we know also that there will be more heavy rainfalls in the future. So trees can work as a buffer as well for this kind of climate change. So that was shown by some colleagues, or well, some people more ecosystem ecologists or scientists that work on the landscape, and they showed that trees and hedgerows are a buffer for the excess of water. There's more transpiration of the tree, and so that regulates the whole water system of plots and a landscape, but also for soil bearing capacity. We can say maybe that also trees are good for grazing and going early in spring or winter, going grazing in the winter, because this is also what we're going to have with climate change, more grass in the winter. So there are a lot of questions about soil bearing capacity. So yeah, so that's what I said about grass growth. We will have more temperatures in the future, but also under trees we can tell that there's a 1 to 2 degrees difference under a tree. So this time it is positive. It is warmer under trees than in control grasslands, in open grasslands. So this is better for grass growth also. And so both we have a positive effect on bearing capacity and also on grass growth, but this was not totally shown by studies. And of course, we have nutrient circles. So these are mainly studied and documented in the literature. Not so much for grasslands, but this is obvious that the biomass and nutrients that are brought by roots and by leaves is important for the grasslands. So there's a lot of research to be further developed. And one big attention I would like to bring is let's be careful about water competition in the summer, and the root system is also influencing the grass production in the summer. So we need to have more studies on this aspect as well. So now to be quick about other valorization, we talked about wood productions. So it could be in terms of a timber. In terms of timber, there were some studies about how agroforestry farms can produce timber and combine it with beef or milk production. It's not totally positive, because we found out that dairy farmers are first of all dairy farmers and not wood producers, and it requires a lot of skills and attention to the trees. So it's not so much for timber that we can combine trees and dairy production, but it can also, of course, be a byproduct. Most of all, it's for energy. So with the trees and hedgerows, it's easy to produce energy, and we're going to lack of energy in the future. So this can be used for heating houses, but also to transform the milk when there's a transformation workshop on the farm, and also for drying barn. So this is more in mountain regions of France, where we have big barns that dry the hay, and this can be combined with a heat system that is fueled by the wood produced on the farm. Of course, we can produce fruits, so this is another source of diversification in a farm. And one interesting byproduct of trees is the wood chips that can be used for energy or for litter. So this was shown to cost 42 euro per ton in auto production for farmers. So this is a very interesting way to produce litter in areas where we don't have a lot of straw, a lot of cereals. So this can be both combined with straw beddings, so a layer of straw and then below a layer of wood chips, but also totally with the wood chips. So that can also work well, and that can be an economic interest for dairy farmers too. So some experiments are going on in France about dairy cows, but for circular cows, it's a big plus. So it has been shown to be effective to have a clean and cheap litter for animals. So then we have a large range of other services. So that includes regulation of water and erosion fluxes, water quality as well. So in terms of loss of nitrogen or loss of pesticides in the water, trees are very good for that. In terms of landscape, some authors also showed that it shaped the landscapes and that society is really interested in hedgerows and agroforestry systems to coin and shape our landscapes. Biodiversity, that's also very obvious. The more you have trees on a farm, the more you have biodiversity, species, and richness, but also diversity of species, and also carbon sequestration, which is becoming a big topic on top of the grassland, which sequester carbon. We also have trees around the grassland or within the grassland that can compensate for the CO2 or the CH4, the methane emission that is produced by the dairy herd. So some projects also in France worked on that, but in general, the international literature is very documented about this issue. So thank you for your attention. I will take some questions if you have, and I invite you to visit our website, the network website RMT Agroforestry.
Thank you, Brandon. In the chat are already some questions. I don't know, can you see the chat, or maybe it's easier for you to read it yourself and then.
All right. Why not bushes instead of high trees? Maybe if I don't know, because we are not that many. Is it possible to take the questions live? If you can explain.
Yes, Abele,
the question.
that was your question.
Yeah, I was thinking that low-hanging bushes could be an alternative to those high trees. Also because we see more rather low bushes traditionally.
Yeah.
Only it takes some effort because you need to cut them the lower path. But probably also with trees you need one day to clean it somewhat.
Yes, of course, but you can see that on some systems that combine shrubs and grasslands. Well, Yasmin is going to talk about pollarded trees that are then pruned or pollarded very low so that the cows can graze the trees directly and graze even sometimes shrubs. But the interesting part of high trees is that you have then a multi-layer kind of production with photosynthesis that is more efficient with different layers that then efficiently take the most of the photosynthesis, which it's quite theoretical, but that can work this way when you have then over layers and lower layers, and we could think about mid layers with shrubs. And in fact, when I talked about hedgerows is not only a row of high trees, but it's a combination of high trees, medium trees, smaller trees, shrubs.
Yeah,
Yeah, of course.
Bushes has perhaps a bit, it was always the advantage that they prevented wind. But now, perhaps
Yes.
with higher temperatures, that may not be such a big issue anymore. I'm not sure, but the bushes
Yes.
were often used to hide us from the wind, close to the seas, as you have your farms. Anyway, it was just a question, sorry.
Yes, no, thank you. It's interesting. And I think for the wind shelter belts, that really makes a difference to have shrubs. And we didn't really study that part in France. The literature is quite poor, funny enough, about this topic, about the wind shelter belts on temperate system. and the impact of trees on wind on a plot. But so it's more research to be done about this topic. And there was also a question from Abel about subsidies.
Yeah, because it's an investment for the longer run, and as I know, farmers often hesitate to go this route because it is sometimes subsidized, but then if a different government comes over 2-3 years, it's not anymore subsidized. So you need a policy for the long run, and that's usually a big problem. Perhaps not in France, but in this part it is.
Yeah, I agree. Yes, the plantation is very well subsidized, up to 100% subsidized, and sometimes you also have subsidies for the 3 first years to maintain and ensure the development of the trees. But farmers, that's the big constraint is time taking to have trees and hedgerows on a system, and as long as we don't have there are some economic values of the trees, as I shown, but not so much well organized. And a lot of farmers that produce in the Bocage region, so the west of France, they have too much trees, too many trees, too much wood to look after, and it's not economically well valorized. So we need a big system for that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. It looks nice work to me to do this kind of research.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would prefer that we will continue with Yasmin's presentation. So we will not be too late in the end.
I'm going to share my screen. I don't think I can share. I don't know why.
Okay. I can also share it.
Maybe I need a permission or something. I don't know.
Normally everyone has permission to present, so.
Okay, I'm trying again.
Not be the problem.
No, it's not working. Ah, yeah, I think yeah. Okay.
Okay.
It's good for you?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. So hi everyone, I'm Yasmin Kadiri, an Agroforestry study engineer in RAE, Forage Environment Ruminant Experimental Unit. So I'm currently working on the Oasis farm, which is an agroecological dairy system adapted to climate change. So its aim is to enable farmers to make a living from their dairy system in a context of climate change, while saving water and fossil energy resources and contributing to a sustainable agriculture. So this experimental farm is part of the Fairless Experimental Unit. It was launched in 2013 under the responsibility of Sandra Novak. The herd is composed of 72 crossbred dairy cows of 3 breeds, so Holstein, Jersey, and Viking Red. 91 hectares are rotated with several years of grassland, followed by 2 years of different annual crops. And we have 4 agroforestry plantations, 3 arboretums, 1 young grove, and 1 old wood. So the aim is maximizing forage diversity to offset the effect of climate change. Here, a few examples of our plots. So the first one is an intraparcel plot of pollard trees to provide fodder. The second is an intraparcel plot of lianas to also provide fodder. And the last is an intraparcel plot of multi-purpose trees to provide fodder and shade. So you have high trees to the shade and shrubs and the pollard trees also for fodder. And then we have also an intraparcel plot of high stem trees to provide wood, an arboretum with 50 different species to provide leaf material and pruning collection, and finally an old wood to provide shade and wood. So the 3 main topics in our agroforestry system are the facilitation competition relationships in multi-stage cover, such as water competition, light competition, or microclimates. The ecosystem services provided by agroforestry in a mixed crop livestock farming system, such as carbon storage, biodiversity, or fodder. And finally, the tree-animal interface, in particular, the use of leguminous plants as fodder, such as palatability, tree resilience, or nutritive value. So one of the first experiments while the trees were growing was about leaves chemical compounds. As you can see in this graph of the crude proteins in function of the digestibility, we compared leguminous plants with conventional herbaceous forages, such as lucerne, dactyl, or hybrid ryegrass. And the sampling was carried out at the end of the summer because that's when we want to use the trees to supplement the ration. And we found that the white mulberry and the goat willow had almost the same amount of crude protein as lucerne and a better digestibility. So in this second graph, it shows that the concentrations of tannins in several leguminous species. Tannins can be anti-nutritional above 50 grams per kilograms. However, tannins are also anti-methanogenic and anti-parasitic, so it's worth taking them into account in the ration. Here are some examples of mineral values compared with classic forage. So I'm not going to explain all the results, but we can see that the white mulberry contains 50 times more calcium than corn, which is important in dairy systems. And in 2021 to 2022, we had a postdoctorand, Geoffrey Mesbahi, who experimented the feeding behavior of cows. And they were observed grazing directly on 4 species of pollard trees, the Italian alder, common ash, white mulberry, and Lutece elm. So we found that the species eaten most was the Lutece elm, followed by the white mulberry, then finally the common ash and the Italian alder. So this is the result in percentage on 839 bites. And we can see our cows on our trees. And to put these results into perspective, tree consumption represented only 11.5% of total grazing. In fact, these were the first 2 years that the cows were exposed to trees, and they were not used to this new fodder. since then, they have learned to eat them, and even a little too much. So to conclude, we found interesting values in chemical compounds. Certain species seem to be more appreciated than others are. And this was the beginning of the experiments as the trees were planted in 2014 and pruned in pollard trees in 2019. And so we need to replicate the feeding experiments now the cows are used to eating trees. We want also to test the resilience of the trees and find out the proportion in the ration. And moreover, we want to find out the quantity of the other chemical compounds and their health value. That's what we can do ourselves, but we need researchers and projects to explore the other topics in agroforestry. For now, we are focused on the chemical compounds and the feeding behavior. Thank you.
Thank you, Yasmin. Are there any questions? Alberto has a question. Don't you think it's better to use trees to feed goats instead of cows?
Yes, of course. It's known that the goats are tree eaters, but it was interesting for us to try with cows because when it's summer and the grass is very dry, it's important to have an alternative to continue to have cows outside and to eat fresh fodder, to also not use too much water to complement the lack of green fodder. So yeah, it was interesting to try with cows, and ancestrally it was used for cows also. Those yeah, it was used for cows also in the past.
Okay. Some other questions? It seems not. So I would like to thank you very much for this interesting presentation. As I already mentioned, it will be published on our YouTube channel and on our website. So if you have people who are interested in watching it later on, then just spread it around. Yeah, I think that's all from my side. I don't know if you have some questions left, or otherwise I will wish you a nice...
Just one final comment about the goats and the question that was asked.
Yes.
We have some experiments currently at the Livestock Institute in south of France about goats grazing mulberry trees. So if you're interested, you can send us an email with Valerie. We can relay some presentations of colleagues that work on goat production, goat cheese, goat dairy herds.
Okay, perfect. Well then, thank you very much, you two.
Thank
and
you.
I wish you a nice day.
Thank
Nice
you.
day.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.